In this video, I will replace a knock sensor on a 4-cylinder 2006 Honda Accord without removing the intake manifold. I'm sure this also applies to other vehicles that use this engine, like the Honda Element and the 8th generation Accord. I needed to replace the knock sensor to clear a check engine light with the P0325 code. To complete this job, you'll of course need a new knock sensor. You need a pair of pliers with long handles to remove the connector. The longer the handles, the better. I will link to some inexpensive pliers with really long reach in the description, but these worked well enough for me. You'll need a 27mm socket to remove the sensor. Along with your wrench, you'll need to use extension bars. I used 6-inch and 2-inch extensions, but if your socket isn't as deep as mine, then you'll need to use 2 6-inchers. You'll also need a flashlight or headlamp and a mirror. First, you're going to have to familiarize yourself with where the heck this thing is on your car, and it's back there somewhere behind the intake manifold. The headlamp can be placed below the intake manifold, and it's going to help illuminate the knock sensor. With the headlamp on, I can see the knock sensor. It's the shiny component there. I'm going to bring the camera down below the intake manifold for another view. The connector plug needs to be unclipped before it can come out. The flat part on the connector needs to be pushed down. I'm highlighting where I pressed with the pliers to unclip the connector. This is where a long pair of pliers comes in very handy. This is probably the most difficult part of the entire job. You have to be very careful not to damage the wire going to the connector. Once you have your knock sensor connector unplugged, insert your 27mm socket over the sensor by feel. I needed to use some tape to keep mine from separating from the extension bar. Break it loose and keep unscrewing until it comes off completely. Now my old knock sensor is removed, and I'm using the mirror to see where the new knock sensor is going in. I'm going to hold the mirror with one hand and screw in the knock sensor with the other. I'll show you how in the next step. There's not enough space to screw in the new knock sensor by hand, so use some packing tape to secure your new knock sensor to one of your extension bars. This will allow you to thread in the knock sensor and pull away the bar along with the tape, since the tape adheres much more strongly to the metal than the irregularly shaped plastic connector of the knock sensor. So again, use the mirror to help guide the threads of the knock sensor to the threaded hole on the engine block. I'll link to the mirror I'm using, but if you don't have one, just borrow your girlfriend's. Now you can insert your 27mm socket over the new knock sensor by feel and tighten to 23 foot-pounds. That's not very tight if you don't have a torque wrench, so just snug it but don't push too hard. Use your long-handled pliers, or fingers if you have tiny hands, to attach the connector onto the new knock sensor, and be careful not to damage the wire. Congratulations, you're done. Thanks for watching, and I'll link to the knock sensor I used and some of the tools in the description.